You might have heard of Touré.
Noah Touré, and it's caught. Noah Touré into the end zone for the touchdown. Noah Touré wide open.
And for good reason. As it stands, he might be one of the best receiving prospects we've ever seen in the ELF. But to understand where we're at, we gotta understand how we got here. These are some of the best debut seasons in European League of Football history. Lewis Geyer is a superstar now, but back then he was just a young teenager on the surge. Flores Calderon is developing nicely. He's in his sophomore season in Milan and had probably the best debut season for a European wide receiver at that point in history. Kasper Jezewski had a very good season. He was nominated for Offensive Rookie of the Year in the same season as Flores Calderon, just missed out, but still a very, very good season. He is also still developing and is widely regarded as one of the best Polish receivers in the league. And Marco Schneider. I often feel like Schneider goes under the radar with these debut seasons, but he put up a hell of a performance in 2022. I have evaluations on a couple of these and I'll leave them linked in the description if you're interested. Now we know how high the bar is for Europeans in their debut seasons in the ELF. Let's look at Sperl and Touré, who are two receivers that are lighting up the league this year. In fact, Sperl is on projection by his average numbers to finish with over 1,000 yards. If you don't realize how big of a deal that is, no European receiver has ever got 1,000 yards in the ELF, and he may do it in his rookie year. Granted, he has one hell of a finishing schedule, so I think he might finish a little bit short. I don't think teams want a rookie receiver to get his 1,000 yards against them. But right now, we're going to talk about Touré, and he has had a monstrous season. Now we've got the intro out of the way, let's talk about his... Now, of course, me showing you a long compilation of every single route he's ever ran would be a little bit long-winded. You'll see much of his route tree when it comes to the actual parts of his game that we're going to dissect. But of course, naturally, we're going to look into the numbers and the facts about how much he's running. We have game one, a lot of inside routes, a lot of diversity. I think this game really does show it the most. That's why I picked it to be first. A lot of hitches, a lot of deep routes, but also a lot of those inside ones and comebacks, a variety on both the wide left and wide right positions. Game 2 exclusively on wide left, but more hitches, a little bit more outside variation, but still a very wide array on his route tree. Game 3, less diversity but spread more out to the right side and more inside, more hitches, more stops, more comebacks, more breaks in his routes. And our final game, again, more inside, more shortness rather than those deep, long developing ones to help out Ben Holmes. This was earlier in the season and you can see this development over the course of the year. When you put all of those together, just that small sample size, it creates a route tree that I think very few receivers in this league can compete with, let alone overtake or even be in the same dimension as. For a 22-year-old in their debut season to have this flexibility with their route tree is unheard of. There are veterans that do not have this route capability. There are Americans that do not have near this route capability. And Touré doesn't just do it for the sake of doing it, he also does it well. And that brings us into... I'm going to be honest, I have seen every single snap Noah Touré has played this season. I could probably count on one hand how many times I saw him drop a football. Touré has some of the best hands in the league, regardless of nationality, regardless of experience in the league. His hands are like vice grips. He will bring in the ball. Doesn't matter if he's taking contact, if the ball's a little bit off, a little bit too high, that doesn't matter. He will reel it in. And this is something that very much surprised me. I was aware that he had good hands coming into this season, but when he's taking contact from some of these corners and some of these linebackers, these are not easy balls to reel in, and he does it with ease, consistently, from week 1 all the way to now. Especially in the red zone and key situations, he does not drop the ball. This part of his game is extremely veteran, and I can attribute this to Reese Horn and Jordan Boer. These two receivers, that are currently at the Vienna Vikings, hold a bevy of experience for Noah Touré to learn from. There are not two receivers that can combine to make this experience possibly in the league. NFL, XFL, CFL, ELF, does not matter. Both of these combined have been there and done all, and their skill sets can directly transfer to Noah Touré's build and frame. He is long, he is athletic, but he's also quick. His hands are big, he has a good catch radius, he has the length in his arms. This is a physical stature that, partnered with that receiver room, is possibly one of the best things for a development of a receiver that we've seen in this league. There isn't really anything that compares to it, especially for a receiver this early in their career. Now, I think by now we've established that he is an elite receiver prospect, but what does he need to do to get better? Now, I think that starts with his release. To be critical, Noah Touré's release is somewhat one-dimensional. He doesn't have a variety of moves or a very deep bag to get off the line against press coverage. He also doesn't have a variety he uses with leverage or timing of his routes or cuts or head movement or hand usage. These are things he's still working on. There's been flashes, and the Vienna Vikings have at times used him in motion to get him a starting release. We've seen this a little bit more as the weeks have gone on. He's moved actually more inside from 1 or 2 snaps during this last couple of games. But gaining a deeper understanding of a release package would benefit Noah Touré a lot. It isn't just his release though, it's also his shot. Now, we talked about his route tree and the diversity of the routes that he can run, but I think in order to get to an all-star or a league leader level, he needs to have more burst and more sharpness with his cuts. Burst out breaks, sharpness on route running, and of course some of that comes as release. That's going to help a lot when it comes to this kind of stuff. But stop-start speed needs to get higher, it needs to get more burst, more explosiveness, and more urgency out of his breaks to get to those positions. Naturally, there'll be some instances where he needs to be in a certain place at a certain time as for the offensive playbook, so not everything is going to be to the same degree, but there is some roundness on those 5 and outs and those posts that could be sharpened up when it's coming against elite defensive backs. Because you've got to remember, with Reese Horn, he is quite often taking up the American, so Noah Touré does get to work on the European DB, and his athleticism is usually enough to overcome them. You don't want to rely on that too much when he comes into his later career of just being a better athlete. Sharpening up the route running will become a massive part of him developing into a potential all-star receiver in this league. There are hints of drift on his hitches as well, where he'll break down. It'll take a few yards for him to fully sit down on those routes. That could be a point that's sharpened up. Again, he is a good route runner, but when it comes to becoming an elite level, it's this drift and this sharpness and this burst out of those breaks that's going to get him to that next level. And a lot of this is tied up to how he starts those routes. I think those two go hand in hand. And that will do today's video. I hope you enjoyed. This one was long awaited. I know I spent a long time watching tape and getting a little bit distracted by other things. But I hope you enjoyed this one. Noah Touré is one of my favorite receivers. Of course, I've been following him for a number of years since Salzburg. And even before that, he's an incredible player. Wish him all the best. I think that he could very realistically go over 1,000 yards, which would be ridiculous if we actually see that happen in a rookie year. I am going to be doing a Spiller video at some point, probably the next one. And then thinking about doing some kind of Patreon or whatever, where I have these kind of polls where people can help decide or vote on what people we want to evaluate next. So let me know if that would be something that you're interested in. Streaming all this weekend, of course. Take a damn short out, Mitch Fettig short out as well. So that's both done. So yeah, talk to me in the comment section. Let me know who you think is going to get 1,000 yards. Who do you think is going to get rookie? I don't actually think Touré is eligible for the rookie of the year. That's why I've said debut season, not rookie of the year. But we'll find out as the league adjusts. I know they've been people I've talked about thought about making it a little bit like to 23, but I guess we'll find out. Thank you guys for staying with me. Thank you for putting up with my ramblings. I'll see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.